the item that I sent you?
I did. Thank you so much. That was very helpful.
Good.
Okay. Good evening. Today's date is October 20th, 2021. This public hearing has been called by the Laws and Rules Committee of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, in regard to good cause eviction legislation. It is now 6 o'clock, and I'm calling this public hearing to order. In attendance are Laws and Rules Committee members Rennie Scott Childress and Rita Worthington, and myself, Jeffrey Ventura Morel, the Chair of Laws and Rules. Common Council members Steve Shabbat and Michelle Hirsch, City staff Dan Gartenstein, Corp Counsel, and Elisa Tinty, City Clerk. So when let's see. Oh, so City Clerk Tinty will call the name of the people that have signed up to speak. When she calls your name, you have the option, if you are joining through Zoom, to turn on your camera and unmute yourself. And you when you start speaking, state your name and address for the record, and you may make your statement. We're asking that you keep statements to 3 minutes or less to accommodate for all the speakers that we have tonight. And if you're calling in, Lisa, what is it that you press on your phone? *6?
Yes.
You press *6 to unmute yourself when your name is called. Okay, may I have the first speaker, please, Elisa?
The first speaker is Amanda Sissenstein.
Amanda Sissenstein. Okay, we can come back to her. Next speaker, please.
Anthony Tampone.
Anthony Tampone, I think I saw you.
Hi,
Anthony.
Hi, I'm Anthony Tampone, Delta Place in Kingston. Everyone deserves a place to live, a clean, safe, stable place to live. We as a community should strive to ensure that every member of this community can maintain and afford a clean, safe, stable place to live. One of the things I do here in the city of Kingston is work as a housing provider. And in that role, I work to ensure that each of my tenants has a stable housing situation. In concept, just cause eviction laws, just like the one proposed, should cause no change to the business model for any good housing provider. The intention of this legislation would not change my operations in any way. It's the profit-motivated landlords and property owners that do not understand that providing housing inherently has a human and social component that this legislation intends to target. At least that's my understanding. Unfortunately, this legislation does little to correct the issues that cause poor and unaffordable housing conditions. That feels like it has not been fully vetted and legally reviewed in order to ensure that the intent is properly enacted. Most of this legislation is redundant and could be confusing. Most of the things prohibited by this legislation are already prohibited by New York State real property law. And enacting new legislation will not change that. Informing people of their rights under the law and enforcement will. This legislation really only does two things. It extends terms. It allows anyone who takes possession of a property to maintain that possession indefinitely, regardless of the terms of the agreement. When the intention for that unit is long-term housing, this causes no harm. But this also means that even short-term vacation rentals or Airbnbs can become permanent residential space. There are many other situations where this could be a problem. This legislation generally caps rental increases at 5%. In concept, that's fine. It's more than inflation, and it's greater than I have ever increased someone's rent. The way this legislation relegates all matters to the courts, though, could be very problematic. We know that these proceedings can take lots of time, leaving either party in a tough situation, and I believe there are better ways to do it. This legislation does not address what is really the biggest issue in extrajudicial evictions, and that is the warrant of habitability. There is no good definition for what defines a habitable rental unit. There is still no easy, transparent mechanism for complaints to be logged with the building safety department. There are no guidelines to let tenants know what should be acceptable and what is not acceptable.
30 seconds.
Okay. This dovetails into a number of other issues we discussed during the housing hearings a few years back. These things have not been addressed, and they all affect whether or not a person has a clean, safe, stable place to live. This body has the ability to solve this problem, and if you really care about your constituents, you will. Taking another city's poorly written legislation is not going to solve it. Truly understanding the problems and addressing them will, and I really hope you do so. Quick PSA, everyone listening, if you're interested in affordable any other houses, imaginekingston.org and Engage Kingston website to get involved in the city's comprehensive rezoning project. With many hands and voices, we will design a city for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Justin Haynes.
Hi, thank you, Chairman, for inviting me. I'm Justin Haynes. I'm the attorney in charge of the Poughkeepsie Office of Legal Services of the Hudson Valley, but I also supervise housing in Ulster County. LSHV is the sole provider in the Hudson Valley of free eviction and foreclosure defense, and as such, we have a unique insight on how this good cause eviction law could benefit tenants in Kingston. The good cause eviction law addresses two problems that we see regularly face tenants, which has become more urgent during the pandemic. The proposed law would entitle good tenants to a renewal of their lease, and it would prevent unreasonable rent increases. Holdover is a type of eviction where the landlord's focus is to regain possession of the rented property, can be brought for no cause, and this law directly addresses the problem. Currently, if your lease is up and a landlord needs no reason or cause to evict the tenant, this is an inherent power imbalance in the landlord-tenant relationship. The only requirement on the landlord is that he or she provide the tenant 30, 60, or 90 days notice that the tenancy is over before the eviction process starts. When faced with the eviction, there are further power imbalances. There's no right to counsel in eviction matters like in criminal matters. Whereas landlords are almost always represented by an attorney, most tenants are not. And LSHV has the equivalent of 2 attorneys to handle over 1,000 annual evictions in Ulster County, including the 700 coming from Kingston City Court. Once in court, many tenants get hostile reception from judges who don't see their struggle in poverty or in finding new apartments, but only see how the landlord was denied something that they're entitled to. Tenants would benefit from any law that helps shift these power imbalances. Since the pandemic began, LSHV has seen a dramatic increase in the number of lease non-renewals, holdovers, and significant rent increases. Kingston City Court data supports our anecdotal experience. In 2018, holdovers represented only 9.5% of the evictions filed in Kingston. In the first 10 months of 2021, holdovers represent now 68% of the evictions filed. Our Kingston office has counseled tenants who have lived in a rented home for 10 plus years, who are on good terms with their landlord, have been paying rent through the pandemic, but now still face eviction. Tenants currently don't have a right to stay in their apartments when their lease or month-to-month tenancy ends. Under this law, they would be able to stay. Some tenants have seen dramatic rent increases of $200 to $400 a month in order to stay where they are. Due to the housing stock shortages and the increased demand for housing, there literally is not enough alternative housing for those tenants to move to. With the county's vacancy rate at only 1.81% for non-subsidized housing, and rent having skyrocketed 24 to 33% as compared to 2016. Our holdover clients are in dire straits, pressured to leave their homes because they can't afford the rent increase or the landlord is selling, but having absolutely nowhere else to move. Under this law, landlords could raise the rent by 5% a year, but if they go beyond that, it would be subject to judicial review. This is the same type of restriction on rent increases that exists for manufactured home park renters, where the law limits rent increases to 3% annually, unless there's been a tax increase, major capital improvement, or increase in operating costs. The tenants we represent would greatly benefit from this law that addresses the 2 biggest problems most tenants face. Thank you for allowing me to testify.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I think Amanda just entered. Amanda Sissenstein.
Yes, hi, this is Amanda Sissenstein. So again, kind of just reiterating that it does solve 2 issues. One issue is one that preceded COVID, as did the housing crisis in general. Right now, tenants, whether they are month-to-month tenants, whether they have a 6-month lease, 1-year lease, they know that at the end of that time, they could be asked to leave for any reason. This makes life very insecure for tenants And, you know, I'm sure we can all relate to the fact that moving sucks. And that, you know, I'm someone who doesn't drive. I also am limited where I can live because I don't drive. I need to be able to get to my job, the grocery store, the bank, the post office, etc., by foot or by public transportation. If I was a person with kids, that would be even more difficult, especially if I would had to relocate to a place where I wanted to keep my children, let's say in the school district, that sort of thing. If I was somebody with limited mobility, there's a lot of very specific considerations for people when, you know, and now on top of that, with the COVID housing shortage, exacerbating the previous housing shortage and the exorbitant rent hikes that we're seeing all over, moving is that much more difficult. This also creates a situation where tenants are afraid to stand up for their tenant rights because they know their landlord can simply not renew their lease at the end of the term, or if they want to get rid of them, you know, as to retaliate for them, you know, like let's say reporting their landlord to the building department or any such thing. So that means tenants are less likely to do that kind of thing and less likely to take action to protect themselves because they're afraid of that the landlord will just not renew their lease. The other thing that this does prevent, as we have seen across the county, across the country, in fact, we are seeing landlords doubling rents in areas like Kingston where there's an influx of people coming in. So we are seeing on multiple cases, just that I've known, that I've actually talked to tenants who are in this situation, where landlords are even writing them glowing letters of recommendation. They're wonderful tenants, they always pay their rent, et cetera, and yet they're still being asked to leave. And all of a sudden they're seeing the empty apartments in their buildings being advertised for twice as much as the previous tenants were paying. So we all know right now landlords are going to be not renewing leases because they know they can get more for those apartments than the people who are currently living there can afford. This law is like so important and so needed and so urgent. And I'm really asking you not to listen to scare tactics from landlords. Let me tell you can tweak and improve and polish this law forever, and they will never, ever support it. Anytime legislation is passed to protect tenants' rights, landlords threaten to sue and or sue. Anytime, any legislation that supports tenants' rights, that's what they will do, and that's what they will threaten.
3 minutes.
Please don't listen to that. And please pass good cause eviction. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Wesley Chareau. Please state your address for the record.
Hi, I'm currently residing in 151 West 72nd Street, New York City. So I'm speaking today because I have a pretty unique position in the matter. I'm a landlord both in Kingston and in Albany, rather a property manager. And so I've experienced the good cause evictions transition in Albany as well. And I was also a property manager of 400 apartments at the time of the pandemic. So I'm very familiar with financial hardship situations with tenants. And during the time, financial hardship actually wasn't the biggest of our issues. You might be aware, but during the pandemic, financial hardship, there were a lot of tools and resources for tenants to take advantage of. We utilized each and every one, and not a single tenant was displaced. However, we did have a problem with nuisance evictions. We had tenants at the time who were smoking in their apartment, causing a disruption to the community. One resident who turned their apartment into a nail salon, which, although entrepreneurial, the chemicals from that could be smelled throughout the building. And in the most important case, we had a tenant who took medications, and when he wasn't on his medications, began threatening other tenants with a hammer. Now, that eviction, as a nuisance eviction, took us 8 months to complete. During that time, we were unable to evict this person, and we were also unable to do anything to stop his behavior at the time. We would constantly recommend that tenants call the police when they feel threatened. And despite this, not one tenant stood up in front, not one tenant came forward to sign a written testimony to assist in the good cause eviction, rather than the nuisance eviction. And why this is important is because it's important to note that nuisance evictions are so difficult to pull off. And even in a situation where it's a danger to other residents, it still was touch and go because people were afraid for their own safety just by having their name mentioned in a court case. And that doesn't just apply to this tenant who is threatening others with a hammer. It applies to those who smoke in their units. It applies to anybody who is familiar with their neighbor and doesn't want their neighbor to know that they're going to testify against them. And with good faith evictions, it's going to make it very difficult to resolve any sort of matters with tenants that not just the landlord, but other tenants want to see no longer in the community. It could completely stifle the ability to remove people who are an active problem in the building, a building that the owner, is paid for and is trying to. So I did hear mentions about a power imbalance of tenants, and I'm not going to speak to that. I'm just going to speak on my own experience in property management, and I don't support the good cause evictions. And my reason for not supporting it is because just as in Albany, as this has recently passed, all of the landlords who I've worked with have immediately stopped purchasing properties there. Similarly, I don't want to see that happen in Kingston.
3 minutes.
I think my only recommendation would be to promote other tools that allow tenants to have more rights, but not to limit the rights of the landlord to work on improving their building and creating a safe space for their residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Ravon Ranga.
Ravon, if you could please unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Really appreciate the time. My name is Bravin Runga, and I'm the political coordinator with For the Many. We are a grassroots organization with members in the city of Kingston. I'm here obviously to speak in support of the good cause.
Can you say your address, please, for the record?
Yes, I can give you our office address. Would that be helpful?
Sure.
Yes, our office address in Kingston is 13 Grant Street, 12401. Great. Nothing I can say in support of good cause eviction can compare to the stories that you have heard and will hear from tenants sharing their experiences. What I can say is something needs to change here in the city of Kingston. The balance of power is decidedly against tenants and obscenely skewed towards developers and landlords, particularly large corporate developers and landlords that engage in predatory practices. That is why tenants here in the city of Kingston live in the constant fear of losing their homes and are either forced to leave the city or are priced into poverty. And while good cause eviction will not single-handedly solve our housing crisis, it's a critical first step that must be taken to give tenants a fighting chance. I do want to take a minute to dispel some of the misconceptions that have arisen around this legislation. Number one, this law does not force landlords to enter into indefinite leases. This law does not infringe upon the rights of landlords. It gives landlords multiple avenues that they can use to evict tenants, whether those tenants are problematic or not, whether they be reclaiming the property for personal use, whether they be declaring their tenant a nuisance, or if their tenant fails to uphold the lease. I know it was mentioned earlier that the process for evicting a nuisance tenant took a very long time in New York City. What I would say is that is a question for the judicial system, and it's about expediting judicial processes. It has nothing to do with this council legislating and granting tenants additional rights. Second, I want to push back against the notion that if only we made things easier for developers and for landlords, if only we increased their profits and gave them more rights relative to tenants, that will. Oh, go ahead.
30 seconds, continue.
That will solve Kingston's housing crisis. That clearly is not the case. Tenants need more tools to have a fighting chance in their negotiations with landlords. Finally, I just want to conclude by thanking the Common Council in Kingston. This legislation has broad support on the Common Council, which is indicative of the widespread public support and public need for good cause eviction legislation, and just urge the council to pass this legislation as soon as possible. As the weather gets colder and housing insecurity becomes more dangerous, as the eviction moratorium is set to expire in January, the Kingston Common Council ought to act swiftly and pass this much needed legislation without any further delay. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Isora Rivera.
Zara Rivera, are you on the call? If you are, please press *6 to unmute yourself, and then you may speak.
Yeah, she's here. Hi, good evening. My name is Isaura Rivera Marin, and I'm live in Kingston since 6 years. I have 2 daughters. I'm a single mother, and I come here tonight because that you guys are the way that we have for complain about or the system that we have a deficit now, say like or houses or renting. So I get a bad experience in my 3 years ago, and now I don't have option like for going another place that I can afford it. I try already many places that they say they want low income people, but they say I'm too low income. Like the unique work that I do now is like a deliveries, DoorDash. That is the option that I get because I'm single mother. So I had to be with my children. So, and I think it's enough if I have a decent pay rent. But now with all this increase, I don't think I can find it a place like I can have a normal life with my daughters, because the one that I have now is a studio, which I pay $950, and I don't know if they will increase in the future, that I hope not. But the options was to move in another place to have their own room or something like that, but it's around 2,000 or thousand, almost $2,000 that I cannot really afford it. So I'm here now because you guys are the one who are amended to do this work for us or this community. So I want to say thank you for the work that you are doing, and thank you for listening to us. And I'm here in representation also the any another single mother that I have friends, and they also struggle and more hard weights. They have more children or more problems economical, but we are here now for you to help us. And I want to say thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Bob Gelbach.
Hi, my name is Dennis. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, so I live in the Roundout, 17 Rogers Street. I have a 2-family house. I've been here for 14 years. I also have a 4-family next door, and we've seen the neighborhood really change over the last couple of years for the better. I believe that there should be some regulations, but I think this regulation goes a little too far. You know, if I want to retire and sell my house, there's no provisions for someone like a mom and pop that just wants to sell and then leave. You know, so I think it's a good thing, but I think it goes too far, and there should be other factors involved. Nevertheless, that, you know, 2 people enter into a contract, I don't feel that the state should be involved with it. But, you know, we have competent people involved in a contract, and now these contracts are basically void. You've rendered them meaningless at this point. So that's all I wanted to say. And, you know, we don't gouge our people. Of course not. I mean, a lot of these tenants are my friends at this point. It's been many years. We've had them together. I think this will actually have a negative effect, because I can tell you when people do leave, my tenants leave, I will not be re-renting. I will probably go to an Airbnb situation or something along those lines. I really feel that this is a problem, I agree, but it should not be on the demand side. You should fix it on the supply side and make more affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Marjorie Leopold.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Hi.
thank you. Thank you very much for proposing this legislation. And I have been working with the Ulster Immigrant Defense Network and the Ulster County Coalition for Housing Justice for the last few years. And as I'm sure you all are, aware of the severely rent-burdened population that we have in Kingston. And we also, of course, have the unfortunate systemic racism, which means that this increase in rents is, of recent years, has disproportionately burdened Black and Brown people. So I really want to speak to the fact that the people who are being priced out of Kingston as we speak are the people who've been working through this pandemic, many of them, in the restaurants, making sure we get to eat, in the CVS's, in the Walgreens, doing all the essential work. And unfortunately, much of it is very low paid. We don't have enough new housing stock coming on board in the next couple of years that really is truly affordable, and we all know this. So where are these renters going to live? They're going to be forced out of Kingston. What kind of community are we going to be? Are we going to be simply a second home place, or a place where only people who make over $60,000 or $70,000 a year as the down payment for a $2,000 apartment can live? Is that the city we're going to have? Or are we going to have a city that really is affordable for people at every income level? And why good cause eviction is necessary is that it does put a cap on these really significant rent increases that are going on because of gentrification. The last person who spoke said, I won't rent again, I'll go to Airbnb. Well, that's part of our problem, and we all know it.
30 seconds.
More and more housing stock is going off the market, and we need good cause eviction in order to prevent people unnecessarily from raising the rents, and then therefore providing secure and safe housing for good tenants. Thank you so much. I hope that you will seriously consider the support that this bill has. Bye.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Rosalia Aragia.
We can skip Rosalia. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Rosa Sanchez.
She is right here, and I will interpret in from Spanish to English.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hola, buenas noches. Mi nombre es Rosa Sánchez.
Good evening. My name is Rosa Sanchez.
Estoy aquí para apoyar la legislación de la renta.
I am here to support the legislation on rent. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Diana Lopez.
That is me. Good evening. My name is Diana Lopez. I'm resident on Stefan Street and community organizer with For the Many. And I am in support of good cause eviction. I personally have gone through so many situations during all my life here in Kingston, about 25 years. I can make a big list of the places I've lived because of different landlords. I've had good landlords and not so good landlords. And so to me, this is a very personal, but of course, with the work that I do, I also come across and I help out folks that are going through the same situation. Yesterday, in the Ulster County Legislature meeting, someone mentioned that landlords are raising rent in fear of a good cause, which that is not true. This has been happening already for years. There is no rental, there's no housing. And to me, it's like really hard, right? When folks come and are like, I'm going through this situation, I need help. We do have the eviction moratorium in place. Unfortunately, some landlords do not abide to it and use the most cruel tactics and intimidation, especially with our vulnerable communities, where they're like, you know what, like if you don't leave, we will call immigration on you. And they take advantage because folks sometimes don't speak the language and they don't know how to defend themselves, and they don't know that there are laws that protect them. So for me, good cause, again, is very personal. And I want to thank the council that support it, and hopefully we can get this passed as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. May we have the next speaker, please?
Phil Erner.
Phil Erner, are you on the call?
Yes.
Right there.
Hi, Phil.
Hi. So, Council, thanks for offering us this opportunity. Phil Erner, 109 Washington Avenue, Kingston. And you've heard me speak in this space before in support of good cause evictions, so I'd just like to add a couple of things at this point. As a reminder, this would give some of our most vulnerable residents a legal tool and accompanying marginally greater chance to remain housed during one of the most deadly periods in the history of the United States. But as I've said before, this isn't really just about landlords and tenants. This is about what kind of community we want to be. This is about, are we going to assume the basic responsibility to keep each other housed here? And if we are, then we have to take certain steps to address the current situation. From the year 2000 to 2017, the median rent paid in the city of Kingston rose by about 25%. The median income in the same period dropped by about half that percentage, but it dropped. That is actually the situation in every city from Westchester to Columbia County throughout the region. Rents are up, income is down. So this is a pre-pandemic condition that we have to reckon with, and we have to consider whether good cause eviction will go far enough in dealing with this. It is my belief that it absolutely does not, but this is one step we still need to take. To any property manager or non-resident landlord, do you suppose if your tenants instead owned their own homes and wouldn't have any fear of retaliation by an outside owner hanging over their head, might they not feel freer to hold accountable their housemates or building mates for any problematic behavior? And to anyone whose livelihood or retirement perhaps might depend on an investment that they made in a home that once again they might not live in, suppose you were guaranteed a purchase when you were ready to sell that property. We somehow guaranteed that you could make the money you needed to make. Would that change your point of view? I have a conclusion. It's that the banks are made of Bitcoin with a guard at every shore, and the vaults are stuffed with silver that the people sweated for. So again, tenants being evicted isn't the only housing problem we have here either. We have mortgages that people can't pay because that got is getting jacked up, and we have property taxes that are going up because the price of sales is regulated by a market, not really regulated at all. And so assessments can go up and people can get taxed out of their homes too. So we need to be thinking about this in a holistic way. Good cause eviction is a good first step. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Before I call the next speaker, I see that a few people have their hand up. If you're trying to get on the list, please message me that in the chat so I can add you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. The next speaker is Adam Katzman.
Adam Katzman, are you on the call? If you are, you may turn on your camera, or if you're on the phone, press *6 to unmute yourself.
I'm not prepared to speak at this moment, thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Kathleen Yeager.
Kathleen Yeager. Okay, next speaker, please.
Laura Mata.
Is that Kathleen?
No, it's Laura Mata.
Okay, the next speaker is Susanna Kimmick.
Susanna Kimmick, are you on the call? Okay. So I think, Elisa, I think Laura Manga and Eric Admiral would both like to be added to the list, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So we will call you when all the speakers that have already signed up are done speaking, Laura and Eric. Next speaker, please.
Fernando Salazar.
Fernando Salazar, are you on the call? Okay, we can come back to these speakers in case they join later. Next speaker, please.
Heidi Juarez.
Can you repeat that, Elisa? You got cut off at the beginning, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Heidi Juarez.
Heidi Juarez, are you on the call?
Sorry, she wasn't able to make it.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Justin Arashan.
Hello, folks. My name is Justin Orshan, 66 Garden Street, Kingston. I've lived here for about coming up on 5 years. I'm speaking, grateful to speak in support of good cause eviction as someone who's experienced personally the urgency that is felt when you realize you can't live in your home in a few months. I'm among a number of folks who got displaced from our home during this pandemic. We were lucky and privileged to find another home, which felt a bit like finding a unicorn in a haystack, because that's what it feels like right now. And I would implore folks on this call and beyond it, if you are not connected with folks who are personally experiencing displacement in our community, to get connected with those people in order to feel the urgency of the crisis at hand. Yes. We need to feel that. I want to uplift the story of someone who is much more deeply impacted by the crisis than myself. I'll share it with their consent and their anonymity. The words they heard was, "People from the city would kill to live in your home." Those are the words of a landlord who, upon purchasing a Kingston apartment within the past year, raised the rent beyond what the current tenants could afford. A group of residents who are predominantly lower income and are already on housing programs who have told them they can't afford to help with the landlord's rent hike. One of them is a single caretaker of 2 babies and an elderly grandmother, a local resident for many years. When the landlord was justifying to this family the displacement of their home, again, I repeat, he said to their faces, people from the city would kill to live in your home. Let that sink in. And if you haven't heard those words yourself, then we need to waken up to the reality that every day that goes by without a protection for the current imbalance of power that folks are experiencing that are allowing them to be priced out of their homes is another day that people are in fear of losing their homes, is another day that they're being told that they have to face rent hikes of $100, $200, $300, sometimes $600 or more, is another day that they're leaving their homes. It can't be understated that the housing crisis and the displacement of our community members is one of the most urgent issues facing Kingston. It is not the sole issue of housing, but it is one of a bigger scope of housing crisis that we're facing. The tools of displacement currently have been the following: dramatically unaffordable rent hikes, non-renewal of leases, and shady backdoor evictions. Good cause eviction would provide some protections that are so desperately needed. At its core, it's the affirmation that people deserve to stay in their homes and within their communities that care about them. It wouldn't do all to solve our housing problems. We need much more. It is a step along the path. And I ask you, if you are not somebody who's experiencing the fear of losing your home, if you own it, or if you're not connected with those folks, get connected with them. Feel the urgency that our community needs this measure and many more like it down the path to support people to stay in our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Tyler Vanderhaag.
Tyler Vanderhaag.
We can skip.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Rashida Tyler.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hi, Rashida.
Hey, I'm here to ask the Laws and Rules Committee to vote yes on the good cause legislation and pass it for a full vote to the Common Council. I'm in support of this legislation because, as you know, I've been before lots of committees of the Common Council for many years and saying the exact same thing. In May of 2020, and talked about a tsunami of evictions. That's been pushed out to further into January. It's not going to get better. It's going to be a drastic and a sharp increase in homelessness. And this legislation would definitely help to stem that tide. But I'm going to be honest, I'm tired of appealing to people's morality and asking them to think about the rise in homelessness. Ulster County has the highest rate of homelessness in the region, higher than Dutchess and Orange County at about 24 per 10,000 people. I, could say, think about the number of people who've had their rents increased $200, $300, $400 per month, who have been living in our community for 20 plus years, who have been basically priced out of the community. I could talk about the number of seniors who are living on our streets, or the number of mothers and children who are living homeless. The fact that we have one homeless shelter in all of Ulster County for a family emergency shelter where single men can go. The fact that basically, it is a horrible and immoral situation that we're dealing with right now. But I'm not going to appeal to people's morality, because for some that doesn't work. For some, we have to look at self-interest. And I'll make this argument. The fact that so many people are being priced out of our county and our community, that's sabotaging our economy. We don't have workers to fill lots of jobs that we've had, for the past years. Those workers are leaving because the rents are too high. We look at California and Silicon Valley, and they're losing population. Here in New York, we actually we're losing a seat in Congress because our prices are too high. We're sabotaging our own future. And landlords who say that they won't rent again because of this law, they're lying. Yes, they will. They'll rent under new laws. They'll find new ways. people will find a way. This doesn't isolate you from your ownership of your property, and it doesn't say that you cannot evict a tenant who is not complying with your rental agreement or not paying rent. It's saying that basically you're not going to just treat people as disposable and not going to destabilize our community. We have to invest in each other, and we have to invest in our community. And then I'll end by saying I'm very surprised that Wesley Chareau showed up on this call, being that he is part of linked with one of the notorious slumlords in Albany. Say hi to the AG's office for me, Wesley.
Kwame Holmes.
Kwame Holmes, are you on the call? Okay, we can come back. Next speaker, please.
Holly Kelly.
Holly Kelly, are you on the call? Okay, next speaker, please.
Onisha Roychowdhury.
Can you repeat that name, please, Elisa?
Onisha Roychowdhury. I can't pronounce the last name. Onisha, Onnesha.
Onisha, are you on the call? If you are, press *6 to unmute yourself. Okay, next speaker, please.
Hi, this is Kwame Holmes. I just didn't know how to unmute before, but I'm here.
Hi, Kwame, you can speak. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I will be brief. I am a Kingston resident, and I'm calling in support of the good cause eviction law. I'm extremely frustrated with the kind of idea that there's any legitimate belief that landlords would be victimized by this law. We've seen property owners in the city experience a massive windfall over the last few years. Property values have gone up over 30%. Property purchase volumes are at 90%. There's literally no inventory. Any basic understanding of economics tells you that the lower supply leads to higher demand, and that increases prices, and therefore revenue for landlords. How much is enough for property owners in this city? Why is their profit and their financial security worth more than the housing security of working class people? Again, as people have said, of the people who have the most risky jobs during a pandemic. I don't understand. It seems rather simple to me that people can make like a 5% rate of return is darn good. And especially if that could happen every year, to sort of claim that people would miss out on this housing market, to miss out on this opportunity to rent in this market, is also, it feels like gaslighting. The notion that somebody would somehow leave this rental market and the revenue that's available. So all we're asking is some little bit of balance to return to the situation and to make it so that this community can continue to have genuine diversity, racial, economic experience and age, and that there's a sense, and people can relax and have a place to live. So I'm done. Thank you so much.
How do you get in line to speak?
I'm sorry?
How do you get in line to speak? I'm sorry.
Oh, you can put your name on the chat, and City Clerk Elisa Tenti will add you to the list.
All right, thank you so much. Where's the chat?
It's at the bottom of your screen. Are you on the phone?
Yes, I just called in.
Okay, what is your name? We can add you.
Ben
then.
Selden. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm sorry, say that again, Ben?
Selden, S-E-L-D-O-N.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Aline Flowers.
Aline Flowers.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, first I want to say thank you so much for giving me the time to speak. My name is Elaine Flowers. I'm the lead organizer for Citizen Action in the Hudson Valley, and I live at 61 Clifton Avenue. I'll be brief, but first I just want to say I moved here in March, and I've had a lovely time since I've gotten here, but when I first came here, it was extremely, extremely hard to find somewhere to live. Just like what Justin was referring to earlier, it was literally like finding a needle in a haystack. I pay just as much now as when I lived in Austin, Texas. And Kingston's a great city and all, but like to pay as much there as I do here is absolutely ridiculous. My lease is up in April, and my landlord has told me that there's a chance that my rent could increase. And if it does increase anymore, I honestly don't know what I'm going to do because I can't really afford to pay much more than I am now. To me, it's not fair. It's not right that folks can just be thrown out, just so he can make more money. I'm sure he's doing just fine with what I'm giving him. So this is really personal for me. I really love this community. I've grown to, meet a lot of great folks, and I don't want to leave. So I just want everybody here to know that I believe that our community is better than this. I believe that we have greater values in that. I know that the Common Council does, and that's why I'm here today to show my support for good cause eviction, and hopefully the Common Council will do the same thing this evening. So thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Sean Griffin.
Sean Griffin.
Hi.
Hi, Sean.
Hi, how are you? So I just, there's a lot of information that I would like to share. I've done a lot of research in the last 2 weeks. I have called every single person on the Common Council. I have texted every single person on the Common Council, and I've only received one communication back, and that was from Patrick O'Reilly. And I would like to encourage all of you in good faith, if we're really trying to have a conversation, then dialogue needs to occur and information needs to be shared. So a lot of people are speaking, and they're making a lot of statements and assumptions, and a lot of things are being said. Predominantly, there's a lot of confusion, and a lot of people say, well, I just don't understand how this person needs more money, or I don't understand this, or I don't understand that. Anybody who has sincere and honest curiosity to really understand this complete picture, I would be very happy to speak with more than 3 minutes. I can tell you right now, as this law is written right now, it undermines fundamental principles of property rights. It also conflicts with New York state law. Our governor recently, in 2019, just passed a statewide permitting process. It's called residential occupancy permits. Every single landlord in the entire state is supposed to have a permit now in order to collect rent. In order to be evicted, you need to have a current permit for every single rental that you have for every apartment. And if it is not in good standing, nothing can happen. Out of curiosity, I contacted the county today, and I contacted the city. Nobody had any understanding that this permit existed. And the fact that there have been many laws that were passed in New York State prior to the eviction moratorium, which have not been implemented or adopted yet. Prior to the moratorium, there were already legislation that the governor passed and the state legislature had passed that is not being adopted or implemented at this point. This law that you guys are proposing is going to undermine a lot of the protections that you say that you want. And there's so much information, much more than I can share. I tried to send something into Ms. Tinty. I gave you a whole bunch of bullet points. I have a lot more information. I'd be happy to share it. And I also can say, I've been a Kingstonian now for 16 years. Here, we started off with 4 apartments. We brought it up to 7 because of regulations. Over the years, we are now going down to having our final apartment. We have a wonderful long-term tenant who we love, and he will be with us as long as he chooses to be. But when he leaves, that will be the end. And every single time I've shared insight about the homestead, non-homestead tax discrepancy, when certain housing projects have gone in, and I explained how they were going to exacerbate the housing shortage and how they are going to hurt low income and affordable rate people, I was told every single time you were wrong. And every single time as it's played out, sadly, I've been correct. So I can tell you, I know so many realtors who are watching landlords sell houses and 2 families get turned into single families. And there's a lot more home ownership and there's a lot less apartments. And I can tell you, my 1 bedroom in Uptown Kingston that's walk to everything goes for $1,000 a month. And I haven't raised his rent in over 6 years, and I don't plan to. But I can tell you that natural gas just went up 30%. Natural gas went up 30%. My utility bill is already $1,300 a month. All of his utilities are included, so I bear that. And there's a lot of a bigger discussion. If anybody really wants to understand why, it's very easy to break down the numbers and the statistics. And America is founded on property rights. You have a right to own your own person, your property. You have a right to do with what you want with your property. You have a right to enter into contract. If you enter into a contract with a consenting adult who has agency and license, the government should not interfere with that contract. It's called tortious interference. It undermines individuals' rights to contract. When you make a statement about any individual and make assumptions about them and say, well, they can't do this or they can't do that because of them being poor, or because of their background.
30 seconds.
It's very insulting. Most poor people I know are very smart and very clever, and I include myself in that because I have to say, after running this house, if I took my house and I put it into a corporate structure, after paying all of my utilities and all of my bills, I could qualify for Section 8 to live in my own house. So this narrative all the time is really false. It's very just. Thank you. And God bless you all. And I really hope to speak to some of our representatives and hear back from them. I have lots of information to share with you. And if you really want to understand this problem, I'd love to talk to you. But most importantly, if you pass this law, you're going to be you can't even be in compliance of New York state law in the city of Kingston. You have prevented compliance. I can't even get this permit. How can I follow the law if I can't even get the permit and you don't provide it? You're the ones who are not complying with the state law. And a lot of the guidelines in this ROP in your proposed law undermines it. And that has to do with owner occupancy. It has to do with owner occupancy and 3 units versus 4 units. There's a lot to discuss, and I don't want to take too much more of your time, but I expect to hear from all of you on the city council so we can actually discuss this, because everybody has good intentions. There's not a single business owner who doesn't want to be able to benefit from having their business and pay their bills. This time This is coming right after an 18-month moratorium. I know several people who have not got a single dollar in rent for 18 months. And now they're still waiting because the courts are backed up. And now you're rolling this back on them. It's not right. And I know many people who are just like myself saying, I'm just not going to do this anymore. And it's not that I don't love my tenants. I have great tenants and we love them very much. And I've helped people get houses in town. We've given people back their security deposit plus money for down payment to house. People have lost jobs, but your law is written. My sister who has cancer, I can't even move into an apartment the way that your law is written. If I have an elderly parent who needs to live with me, I can't ask my tenant at the end of our term, not evict them, but a natural sunset provision and say, this is the end of the term. Look, we're friends. I'll help you find something else, but I got to move a family member in there. You don't even allow for that.
Thank you, Sean. Your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you. I'm just a quick note to everybody on the chat to please keep it civil and keep the personal attacks out of the chat. Next speaker, please.
Jeffrey.
Our next speaker is Admiral.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Eric.
Okay.
Hi.
Thank you. I'm not feeling well, so just excuse me. I'll be as brief as I can. I've been a realtor for over 21 years. I own a duplex on 41-43 Lounsbury Place, and I've also helped people find units to rent. I've also helped the grade A landlord try to find their first investment. Most grade A landlords who are buying a simple two-family home like myself worked really, really, really hard to finally be able to build a business model where I can find an investment property to help my future. And folks, if a 3-bedroom apartment is running at $2,400, that's what the market value is for a 3-bedroom apartment. We can't change the biggest economic engine in our city, which is real estate. That is a big driver for us. I also have to say that 2 years ago, in August of 2019, the landlord-tenant rules changed dramatically to swing to the tenant side. They are protected in many, many ways, just like when they changed 2 years ago in August of 2019. I'll make it brief, but I just think that this good eviction clause is a terrible idea. And as I sell these investment properties to more investors, they're now hedging on whether or not to even look at these properties because they're understanding of the laws that now could be coming down. I think what obviously is needed by hearing some of these stories is more housing. And I don't think you should revert back and almost punish an investor who's just trying to get what market value is. If someone is buying a duplex for $400,000, they're going to expect what market value is for that. I think we need more income coming to like social services or maybe Section 8 to help pay for the increase. Maybe it may seem dramatic, but there are other ways to help tenants afford to stay where they live. And that's just really what I like to say. I think this is one of the worst ideas I've heard in a really long time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, I missed my chance earlier. I'm hoping I can speak. My name is Anisha Roy Chowdhury.
Yes, we'll circle back around to the people that didn't get to speak when they were called.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next one is Laura, and I didn't get her last name. She
Laura?
was.
Hi, Alicia. It's Laura Mata. How are you?
Hi, how are you? Go ahead.
Good. To the Rules and Laws Committee and the Common Council, I have a strong statement I'd like to state. Good cause eviction, when you really weigh out and you do weights and balances, right? So there has to be justice. You have to play against what's best for the landlords and what's best for the tenants. And you have to consider these things most seriously. Consider this. I am the poster child for good cause eviction. I pay my landlord every single month. I pay him in advance just because, to me, this is where I need to live. I have a child who is disabled, and it's my son's senior year. It's the first time he's entering school since COVID. I would not allow him to attend because I'm a pediatric nurse. I make good choices for his safety. But this year is his senior year. And this was the year I was told to leave the building without cause. The cause, I come to find out, after I had an evaluation done here at my building, was because I have a mold problem in my building. Finally got my landlord to own that and stating that you need to leave because I need to remediate the mold and you can't live there. Well, here's the thing. I check out apartment prices because I don't want to live in a situation where mold can compromise the health status of my family, as we all are immunocompromised. We're fighting, we're staying here. It's what we have. There is a 1-bedroom apartment 2 doors down from the row house on Henry Street, 600 square feet, $2,500 a month. Now I'm knowing that person that rented that 2.5 months ago on Zillow by now is begging their landlord, why am I living here? Why? Because they don't understand. I'm a transplant myself. I came from Queens years ago and I've been in this city since 2009. This is my home. This is my community. This is what I care about. As a nurse and the folks that I serve and my community, I'm just out there. I coach for the YMCA, the Upper Division League for the males. I help them get scholarships, the Boys and Girls Club, any kid, anytime. This is something that I will do for my community. Not only my community, the larger picture, and the larger picture has to be understood, okay? In the nation, and you have not had the statistic yet, but you're getting it right now. Nationwide, Ulster County, number 2 in the entire country in terms of influx. Yes, take a note. Number 2 in the entire country for the influx of people moving in and taking over our housing, which is displacing people. And that's why a rental on Henry Street, 600 square feet, which would normally go for, if you could rent it from the row house, good luck, maybe $750. Cedar Street, Franklin, Liberty, high crime areas. They're now being gentrified most seriously, and they're at the top level. It doesn't even make sense. Why doesn't it make sense? Because we haven't caught up with the reality of the fact that COVID did happen. And what happened was people fled from the city, all the boroughs, Westchester, Rochester County, Rockland County, wherever they would come in and they took over our housing, and they're displacing our housing. Now the landlords are going to make it, okay? They always do, because the tax increase has not been in relation to what they're getting in terms of their rent. So it happened in my building. I had a couple living upstairs and they're out of building code, because a 2-bedroom apartment, building code means you can only have 2 people in a 1-bedroom apartment. They had 6. They were paying $850 a month. The folks that moved up from Brooklyn are now paying $1,500 a month. And that's trying to happen here again to me and my family. But it's not just about me and my family. It's about our community. And when we think about good cause eviction, let it be a non-payer, okay? But if you're paying your rent and amen is right. And may God hear everything I'm saying, and may you hear what I'm saying, and hope that you believe in an Almighty, whoever he is to you or whoever she is to you. Doesn't matter. I don't judge. But good payers and people who care about their communities don't deserve to be displaced ever, ever, ever. And when you have a family and you're taking care of your property and you're taking care of your responsibilities and you're tidy and you're clean and you pay your money and you start to get involved in actions like this because you care about your community. I've been caring about my community for a long time, but then I was the next one with my neck on the line. And when my neck went on the line, I said, it's not just about me. It's not just about my family, my disabled child, my child that's finally his senior year. It's happening. He's in school. He's safe, COVID or not. I love Kingston, and I will not see Kingston be trampled upon, gentrified, and taken over by what I think is just, everybody wants to live here now. Why? It's 75 miles. It's a train stop. That's what it is. And
3.5 minutes.
I know. Hey, other people went overtime, and I will for a second too. So it's remote workers. Okay. Corporations have figured out this part. They're really smart. Okay. I have my MBA. This is what they figured out. I don't need to have supervisors. I don't need to have an office space. I don't need to rent that. I can have remote workers, and they can work in their pajamas from home, and they can live in Kingston, and I don't have to supervise them or pay for the office space. So we have empty office buildings throughout Manhattan. Okay. It's empty now. Shearson Lehman, go ahead, walk through the building. Find me the rented office spaces. Go right ahead. Cantor Fitzgerald, where? They're not rented anymore. They're working from home in their pajamas. And where they live? Ulster County. Those are the facts. Check it out. It's real. We're number 2 in the country. And we should care about that. And I thank you for your time. And I realize I'm very passionate. Maybe it's from the basketball coaching, maybe because I'm a nurse. I don't know where it came from, but I know my mom said I had a big mouth and said to use it when I need to. And I'm using it right now because I really care about this community. And I want you to care as much as I do. I'm giving my love. And if you want me to go out there and donate a kidney, no, I'm just kidding around. Sometimes you have to have a sense of humor. Whatever it takes to get reasonability back into the situation, let's process that. Processing is important. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time, and it can be emotional because you're all asked right now to make choices, and you feel very ambivalent because you're feeling things from every side and you're in the middle. Being in the middle is not comfortable, but at some point you have to step left or step right. Only you can make that decision, but care as you make that decision because I care about you. And thank you for the time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Ben Sheldon.
Ben Sheldon. Okay, next speaker, please.
Ruben Cash.
Right over here. 1 second.
Sure.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, I'm Ruben Cash, and I'm here in support of good cause eviction. I'm 17 and I've lived with my parents in my parents' home in Glenford my whole life with abundant resources at my fingertips, seemingly everywhere I go. I can't think of anyone I know that isn't a homeowner except for my grandma. I guess my point is that it's hard to imagine living differently without the privilege of a safe, healthy space to call home that I have autonomy over. It's something I take for granted. And the government, which is rooted in anti-Black racist capitalism and cis-hetero patriarchy, is taking people's home. Everyone should be granted a home. Gentrification is colonialism. It needs to end. I don't know what else to say. There's a housing crisis everywhere. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Carol Garfinkel.
Hello.
That's me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, I just, I am a landlord. I am not a big developer, and I just want to talk so people can know what a small landlord looks like. I have units in the area that range in rent from $535 to $1,100 for a 2-bedroom. And I have the tenants in the unit that cost $1,100. June was their last month that they paid the full rent. Spent hours on the New York State website where they're trying to get rental assistance, but there isn't any place for me to get assistance paying the bills for the building. So I really don't like being grouped in with developers or large landlords or people who, you know, are not decent to their tenants. But I also, when I do talk to people about being a landlord, one of the first things I say is how amazing it is when people apply that their jobs don't pay them enough to afford an apartment. Kingston has a housing shortage. This should be looked at in a broad view, you know, in a broad sense. How do we solve the housing shortage? How do we get more affordable housing? You know, maybe we just don't look at big developments. We also look at how we're going to have get more people to be able to afford homes. You know, maybe we need to regulate Airbnbs. But it is already very, very hard for landlords to evict a problem tenant. If you have to go, it got a lot harder. Someone already mentioned in the middle of 2019. There's already very strict laws in what we can do, and now by law the courts will favor tenants. There's a law that says if the tenant can't find a home, you can't evict them. So I don't think eviction is the problem, you know, and I'm sad about the housing shortage and how hard it is for people to find homes. But maybe part of the plan is to look at how to help landlords provide affordable housing. Maybe there should be a way to make it easier for landlords to charge reasonable rents. You know, maybe there should be tax benefits to if you provide. Excuse me? Maybe there should be a way to support landlords who do provide reasonable rents. And maybe that's all I have to say. I just hope that this law just looks like it will bog up the court system. And I can promise you it's already very hard to evict a tenant. I'm also a real estate agent, and it is not a lie that this is a discouragement to, it's a discouragement for good people to own and manage smaller multifamily properties.
3 minutes.
I'm said what I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Brian Cafferty.
Excuse me, this is Ben Selden. It wasn't working before. I was before.
Okay, we'll Brian Cafferty, and then we'll call on you again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, I wanted to thank everybody for the opportunity to speak. I also want to also want to thank, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to also thank the members of the Common Council and the members of the committee that worked on putting legislation together. My genuine concern here is, well, first of all, I'd like to say the word or the term landlord should be jettisoned. It's an antiquated, ridiculous term, and doesn't apply to a great many people that spoke here tonight, including Carol and Sean Griffin and Anthony Tampone and Eric Admiral. And I'll throw myself in there. I've been a property owner that has provided rentals and housing to people for almost 40 years. And I'm hardly a lord. However, just the term is, the term just gets people to assume things that perhaps, leads them to false conclusions. Anyhow, this is an incredibly complex problem. And I just want to say to all of the people who spoke that are experiencing problems with affordable housing and that have experienced, ridiculous rent increases that have put them out of their houses. I speak, when I say my heart goes out to everybody, I understand there's a problem. I understand there's a affordable housing problem. And I think that this law is attempting not to so much address the issue of unfair evictions, although I know there's probably unfair evictions. I know there are unfair evictions. However, I really think that as it's written, it's a poor attempt and somewhat of a backdoor attempt at rent control. And I think it's placing an unfair burden on a great many small multi-unit property owners that are, just simply aren't rich, and placing a burden on them to deal with the affordable housing crisis that we have. And I know there's not a lot of sympathy amongst many of the speakers towards people who own property and rent. But the truth of the matter is that many of us have worked very, very hard, and we've had to deal with a great many expenses. And I think that there's a huge burden being placed on them by a poorly written piece of legislation. I think that we need legislation to protect people against unfair evictions. This particular piece of legislation, although well-intended, I think is going to have really bad unintended consequences. And I think that the legislation needs to be looked at in a more holistic context of the overall real problem that we have, which is a lack of housing in general, and in particular, affordable housing. And I really urge the committee to just take a breath with this legislation and reconsider.
30 seconds.
Yes, thank you, Elisa. Reconsider the ramifications of the law. It contravenes or contradicts real property law. There's a number of problems. Anyhow, I just hope we can do better with this legislation. And I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to speak. That's it.
Thank you. Did you catch that name, Elisa? I think it was Ben.
Yes, Ben Selden.
Yes, thank you. Hi, how are you? I'm a property manager in Kingston, and people claim that they're going to get to some eviction court and they're going to be unjustly evicted. It's not like that at all. It's a really difficult, cash-intensive business that is huge losses. I mean, people can take advantage and live somewhere for free for a year, and it's really just protecting landlords and property managers and owners because a lot of times the landlords and the people are involved in the deals too. They're just protecting them from getting paid. If you lease a car, you can't decide, well, listen, you know what, things aren't great, but I can't keep my car right now, so I'm just going to keep it and not have to pay for it. You're going to get it repoed. It's really just not a situation. There's really no other situation where somebody could say, you could have a small unit and you're renting it out and somebody can't pay, and then it's unbelievably difficult to get them out and it costs you an enormous amount. And the clear thing that's going to happen, it's already happening, is that there's no reason to make places any nicer. They should just stay as they are and deteriorate, because there's really not going to be any reason to have any rent opportunities, and there's really no point in working on it. So that's just going to be a pretty obvious unintended consequence. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
So that is our list. I can go back up to people who originally did not show up.
Yeah, can we just call, the people, there was a few people that said they changed their mind about speaking, so I think we can skip them, but if we go back to the beginning of the list and call the.
Hello, I never heard my name's called, and it was supposed to be on the list.
What was your name?
Zahra Awadallah.
I'm sorry, what is it?
Zahra Awadallah, it starts with a Z.
No, I don't have you on my list, but if you would like to speak now. Can you spell your name?
Yes, I would. Yes, it's Z as in zebra, AHRA. And my last name's AWADALLAH.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, go ahead.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Zahra. I'm a citizen of Kingston. I wanted to speak out in support of good cause. I was displaced this summer due to domestic abuse. I am African American. I'm disabled. I lived in hotels for 3 months because I could not find affordable housing in Kingston. I had to have my friends fundraise for me. I actually had to have someone make a raffle just to have somewhere for me to sleep. I know many people in the same situation, disabled people just as me, who are living in hotels that are reeking of mold and they're getting sicker. And I don't know how we can compare that to a landlord's hurt feelings or missing out on some profits. This whole housing crisis is destroying the community. I am active in, charity and community work, and I've seen people disappear. And those are the people who are dropping off foods to their neighbors. Those are the people giving people rides to the doctor. And now they're gone because they have nowhere affordable to live. We're living in a global pandemic, and the fact that we're sitting here debating profit, I think, is a bit outrageous. The landlords have limited rights to rent, but we need our basic human rights to be housed. And in addition to that, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. So that's really all that I have to say.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Let's see, Kathleen Yeager.
Kathleen Yeager, are you on the call? Okay, next speaker, please.
Susanna Kimmick.
Susanna Kimmick. Okay, next speaker, please.
Fernando Salazar.
Fernando Salazar. Next speaker, please.
Holly Kelly.
Holly Kelly. Okay, next.
That is the end of my list.
Okay. So is anybody else on the call who would like to speak about good cause eviction at this time? Is there anybody else on the call who would like to speak regarding good cause eviction legislation?
Hey, Jeffrey?
Yes.
I got an email from someone who's been trying to get on. named Adele Ruger.
Okay, is she on now?
I don't know.
Adele Ruger?
I just see an email from her. I guess she didn't have the correct information, so it's a little bit too late.
So this is Rashida Tyler. We had a lot of folks from the community who said they wanted to speak. It seems that some of the call-in information changed on the calendar. I know Dr. Kwame Holmes was talking with some of them, so I'm not sure how many folks. We had about 10 more people.
Okay, are any of them on the call right now?
I'm not sure.
Hold on, let me look.
Okay.
Just so everyone knows, the call-in information did not change. I added the link. So the call-in information has remained the same.
Yes, so that's correct. The call-in information was the same. It has been posted since the meeting was announced initially, and we just added the Zoom link so that people who wish to speak on camera could join that way also. But anybody who had the call-in information should have still been able to join using that number.
Jeffrey, is it okay to ask some questions just to get some information?
Questions of the council?
Like, for instance, going forward from this point, what is the process going forward?
The process, depending on
yeah.
Depending on how we have a Laws and Rules Committee meeting right after this, and then the committee will decide how to proceed at that time. But the public hearing is just for us to hear commentary from the public.
And your meeting will still be open to the public for people to listen to your deliberations, correct?
Yes, anyone can listen. The link for it, you can listen through YouTube Live or via phone number. The link is on the city's website.
Okay, so you're not gonna continue your meeting on this link, on this feed?
No, it's a separate meeting. So we will, as soon as this public hearing is done, we will sign off and go onto that meeting.
Okay, well, that's important information because I wouldn't have known that.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
Yeah, I think unfortunately a number of the people who had said they were going to speak were on, but then they weren't able to stay on for the entirety of the call. So though I am contacting a couple of them, I think there might be, if Sarah or there was a Sally Gilchrist who might be there but might not be. I also can say that one of the people who I was speaking to, their landlord spoke, and they texted me to say that they were now afraid to speak, which I think is a really powerful illustration of the heavy hand that landlords have on the scale of justice in this case.
Thank you. Yes, so I will keep the public hearing open until this Friday at noon. And we will accept written comment for anybody who didn't get to speak tonight. So that written comment can be submitted to City Clerk Elisa Tinti at emtinti@kingston-ny.gov. And anytime before Friday at noon, we can accept written public comment.
And just to be sure, Jeffrey, tonight's vote by the Laws and Rules Committee is just to vote on passing this to the full to the full council.
If it goes for a vote, that will depend on what the committee's discussion is. The committee will decide by a vote if there is a motion and a second, if they wish to move this to the full council.
Okay, thank you.
Jeffrey, we have one other person on the line who wants to speak. and her name is Leticia Lopez.
Okay, Rennie Scott Childress, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that there was a motion and a second at the meeting of the 29th. And so it's actually on the table. So the vote would simply have to be to take it off the table. We don't need a motion and discussion for us to discuss it, just to take it off the table.
Okay, thank you for that. I was absent at that meeting. Thank you for the reminder.
And also, could I just remind folks that whatever we say here tonight is simply advisory. You know, even if there's a majority of folks who vote against this, it still goes to the Common Council. It just goes with that advisory vote.
Correct. Thank you, Rennie. Okay, Leticia, are you on the call?
Yes, I will be interpreting.
Hi, thank you.
Mi nombre es Leticia. My name is Leticia. He vivido por 25 años en Kingston. I have lived for 25 years in Kingston. Y jamás me imaginé. And I never imagined pagar tanto para una renta. To pay a lot for a rent. Pero sí, bueno, no es mi caso, pero sí de mis hijas. This is not my case, but it is my daughter's. Ellos pagaban 1,500. They used to pay 1,500. Y los 2 meses del tiempo de la pandemia le subieron otros 500. Así que ahora ellos pagan 2,000. So 2 months after the pandemic started, they were raised with $500 more, and now they pay $2,000. Yo me pregunto, con el sueldo que tenemos, nos alcanzaría para la renta, pero no para la comida. I asked myself that with the salaries that we have, we get enough for the rent, but not for food. Y lo que pues me preocupa pues son cuando hay niños de por medio. And what worries me more is when there's children involved. Y por eso estoy acá, para que pues nos ayuden a que somos muchas personas que necesitamos de que por favor no nos aumenten la renta, porque pues tenemos que ir a vivirnos a la calle porque ¿cómo? So that is why I'm here, to ask for support, and so we don't have to be living in the streets. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have one other person, Adele Ruger.
Okay, Adele, you can unmute yourself and
Hi.
Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm a property owner in New Paltz. And even though it's not Kingston, New Paltz just went through the process of their good cause eviction law and decided to table the whole thing because they felt that after listening to many tenants and many property owners, that the actual problem was not going to be addressed by the law. So this isn't really an eviction law, it's a lease renewal law for the most part. And sometimes you just can't renew a lease. So a tenant may not be a good fit, for example, and may be harmful to other tenants in the building, or making noise or doing things that don't quite meet the threshold of going to court. And for the sake of the other tenants, and many of you may know what that is, I was a tenant in my life too, you would be happy for the simple process of not renewing the lease. This law as proposed, I don't think addresses the problem of vulnerable tenants. And it doesn't do anything to solve the housing crisis either. Landlords, and I know in New Paltz anyway, are becoming much stricter now because of the fear of the law. So for example, a marginal tenant with so-so credit, a landlord might take a chance with that person and give them a lease and give them an opportunity. That's going to go away with this law. They're going to become much stricter with the credit scores, with the references, with all the things that make it difficult to get an apartment for many. There are issues. There's a housing shortage, there's no question. And the best way to solve that obviously is to have more housing. And we, in our little group in New Paltz, we see many landlords now raising their rents because they're afraid that they won't have that opportunity if this law goes through. So their rents are getting higher and higher. I just don't think that this particular law will solve the problem that the tenants are having right now. There may be other ways, but this will not do it. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to speak at this time? Anyone else who wishes to speak about good cause eviction legislation? Anyone else who wishes to speak about good cause eviction legislation? Okay, as I said before, the public hearing will remain open until this Friday. Let me just look at my calendar. This Friday, October 22nd at noon. So any written comment can be submitted by email to City Clerk Elisa Tinti at emtinti@kingston-ny.gov, or can be dropped off at the drop box at the side entrance of City Hall. At this moment, we will adjourn this public hearing. And so we adjourned the public hearing at 7:40 p.m. and it will remain open until October 22nd at noon. Thank you all, and I will see you in a few minutes. I will take a 2-minute break and then we'll go into laws and rules. We are already an hour late to start that. So the link for laws and rules for anyone in the audience that wishes to listen in is posted on the city website.